I chose green wood because it overlooks the beautiful bird-filled forest of the Udawatakele Sanctuary. Everything you're about to see was filmed over 3 weeks from this balcony. During this time, the temperatures in Kandy were exceptionally high. This made filming the birds particularly difficult. This was partly because they were reluctant to come out of the cool forest, and partly because when they did, they preferred to stay in the shade of deep, dense foliage. I was first alerted to the presence of prolific bird life when I heard a tap-tap-tapping at the window one morning. A male golden-fronted leafbird had arrived to attack his reflection in the glass. I subsequently found that he did this 3 or 4 times every day. He was convinced that this was a rival male trespassing on his territory. The quite small and very common spotted dove is named from the black and white checkered patch at the back of the neck. They would spend a lot of time quietly preening their feathers in the jackfruit tree directly in front of the balcony. The spectacular male of the purple-rumped sunbird is common in gardens throughout South Asia. Close by the hotel there was a nest. As you can see, this is suspended directly from the tip of a twig. The colours of the female are relatively dull compared with those of the male. She's currently lining the interior of the nest with fluffy seeds. Every few minutes she would arrive with a fresh supply of these carried in her beak. Now and again her mate would arrive to check on how things were going. To one side of the balcony there was a palm. In the early morning, before it got too hot, these white-rumped munias would sit and bask for a few minutes. On this particular morning, on an adjacent branch, there was a group of scaly-breasted munias. The bird at top right is an adult, the rest are juveniles. The adults swiftly left, but these juveniles stayed for the next half hour. Note how one of them can't resist yawning. This was a prelude to what happened next. Gradually, over the next few minutes, eyelids began to droop and they started to fall into a doze. They snoozed in the sun for several minutes, ignoring me standing close by. Then gradually, one at a time, they began to wake up and stretch. A third species of munia, the black-headed munia, was also present. All 3 of these munia species feed mainly on grass seeds. They actually benefit from man's destruction of the forests, which creates sunny open areas where grasses can thrive. High above the grassy area, on a tall tree, was the perching spot for this chestnut-headed bee-eater. Among the bee-eaters, this one is of medium size. Every few minutes it would swoop out to snap up a passing insect. This would be repeatedly bashed against the perch to subdue it before it was swallowed. Now and again it would take a break from hunting to give its plumage a quick preen. Because of the close proximity of the Udawatakali forest, I was able to film these hill miners, which are forest birds. Like most miners, the hill miner is very vocal and is constantly calling. Some mornings a white-throated kingfisher would perch on the same tree that was used by the chestnut-headed bee-eater, but for most of the day it perched on a low wall in front of my balcony. It's keeping an eye open for insects as well as fish. This is what it's looking at, a marshy spot with a stream down to the right, just out of view. Just now, the muddy area beside the stream is being enjoyed by a couple of young wild boar. This is the same species of pig that we find in Europe. It's very, very widespread. This pair, along with their mother, come regularly out of the forest almost every day to enjoy the mud and the sun. The kingfisher's favourite wall was also home to this male green garden lizard. It's common in cities throughout Sri Lanka, but you won't find it in dense forest. The head nodding is common in agamid males and has a territorial function. The male has complete control over that bright orange colour of its head. In actual fact, it can turn it on and off at will. It only takes about 1 minute to fade down to the original green, as seen here. Did you spot that ant jumping onto the lizard's eye? It's obviously a real irritation. So much so that it causes the lizard to run off. Over my 2-week stay, some pink flowered trees burst into blossom in the forest. The scene constantly changed, as did the birds. For example, one day this greater cuckoo turned up, right in front of the balcony. This is quite a common bird throughout India and Sri Lanka. It's often found near human habitation. Its call is a characteristic sound throughout South Asia, wherever there's suitable habitat. Now let's watch one actually calling with its mate replying in the distance. What's the chances that a white-eye will catch a caterpillar right in front of me? By contrast, filming this very common red-vented bulbul was no problem. My favourite birds were the yellow-billed babblers. Very common, not pretty, but very interesting. They live in noisy family groups of 6 to 10 birds and spend a lot of time interacting with each other. While preening their feathers, they always seem to prefer to sit side by side, nice and close. This gives them a chance for some very pleasurable mutual grooming. This close contact obviously gives the birds great pleasure, and generally speaking, all the members of the family group get along really well. But it seems that where two groups are concerned and meet up at the edge of their territory, things might not be quite so friendly, as we'll see. I filmed an apparent war breaking out between two neighbouring groups. Apart from the wild boar, the only other mammal that I managed to film was these taupe macaques. As with many monkeys, they prefer to use convenient electricity cables as their main highways. The taupe macaque is endemic to Sri Lanka and found nowhere else. It's very adaptable and thrives in many different habitats: forest, cities, the seashore, anywhere. Juvenile macaques tend to be very playful and quite inventive in their games. While the juveniles play, the adults enjoy a relaxing session of mutual grooming. And to finish, my final dawn from the balcony.